Today's date is October 9th, 2016. I want to go over a trade setup that I was watching on Friday. I actually go over a few of these. These were a little different. These were not a typical CRT trade, but they are a trend trade. And I do take these from time to time if I see a really, really good setup. The CRTs are definitely my favorite, but these trend trades usually work out really, really well if you know what you're doing. And I have had a few people ask me about these trend trades and how to trade them. And so I wanted to create this video because I have not created one in a while, especially for the newer traders for the group. So let's go ahead and get started here. This is the dollar yen H1 trade setup. You can see right now that I have my screen a little more enlarged so that people can kind of get a closer look at this, because you know that I zoom out quite a bit to determine the proper CRT levels and for the max move stuff. So I've got it zoomed in a little bit here. But anyway, this is the trade that I was watching for. It's the H1 dollar yen trade setup. I was looking for a first touch setup, which would have been right here. You see the strong move down and then a retest of the upper band. If you've been with me for a while, you know what this means. So I'm definitely looking for a retracement down after this strong move, because as you know, after a very strong move, the other side of the bands usually react or work very well as resistance or support. In this case, it's going to be resistance. But again, while they do work 80 to 90% of the time, you have to make sure that you are meeting other criteria, because you don't just take trades based off of the upper bands or the lower bands, because you're going to get chopped to pieces if you do that. I want to make sure your success rate is at 90% or higher. So you have to be very careful how you take these trades. But the reason why I was looking at the dollar yen trade setup on the H1 so strongly was this right here. You're going to see that this move up was getting very, very extended. In fact, if I zoom out a little bit, you can see that we bottomed out down around $100. And we moved all the way up to 104 with really no major retracement to speak of here. So this was very much on my radar. In fact, we have a little bit of a head and shoulders top pattern. We have a left shoulder right here where my cursor is at. And then we had a higher move up to create the head. And then we had a right shoulder created. In other words, what is happening here is you have buyers pushing this market up, and then you have new buyers coming in here, pushing price on this is a pretty significant pullback. And then on this last push up, you can see that there were not enough buyers in the market to take out this last high. So sellers were beginning to push this down. So we have a bit of a head and shoulders top pattern right up here. And if I put my trend line here, this right here is going to be the neckline, which just happens to be on the major moving average on the H1 chart. If I zoom in a little bit here, you can see here's support, another retest. There it is again. We come down here. We have a bit of a fight. You can see if I zoom into the 15-minute time frame, take a look here. Again, you had support, bounce. Again, we had another bounce here. 1, 2, 3. This is the fourth one. Keep in mind. And then you have a bounce off of this trend line the fourth time, and then you have a failure. This is the fifth hit of the trend line. You should know what that means. So we had a breakdown here, and after the breakdown, you're going to see that we actually, on this candle right here, this was probably a news event, I'm imagining. I think this was Friday, so this is non-farm payroll. You had a push up off of the trend line, and then you had a collapse down. On this candle here, you pushed all the way down to S2, and then you came back up to close above it. This next candle, we pushed up to retest this broken trend line, and then we collapsed. So for that reason, this is a very big area in the market, because we had a major failure of a head and shoulders pattern. So this is definitely a trend line to be watching. So we go to the H1 time frame. Again, 90%, 80 to 90% of the time after a big collapse like this, through the lower bands, you're going to have a retracement once you hit the upper band. Again, make sure if you're taking these, it happens quickly after the MACD zero line crossover. Why is that? Because you are still pretty early on in the trend. What you don't want to see is you don't want to see this push up after you've gone down 10 MACD bars, because that is definitely not early in the trend. Usually my rule for this is when I get a retracement and a retest of the other side of the bands, I want it to happen within 3 to 5 bars of the MACD zero line cross. This is the zero line. You can see that the MACD was holding above it for a significant period of time. We finally broke below the zero line. We had 1, 2, 3. This was the fourth one. So this is actually a pretty good level because, again, we're still pretty early on in the trend. The other thing I want to show you, too, is the H4 time frame here. We had a major level of resistance up here. We had spoken about this earlier in the week in the trade room. But again, I was a little hesitant to take it off of this without some kind of confirmation because, again, the daily charts are definitely very bullish looking right now, and that kind of concerns me a little bit. So I was not willing to take a sell off of this, although it did work out quite well. But the point I want to make here is this. We are at a major resistance level, so this is more likely to see a stronger push down because, again, this is an H4 level, so the move is going to be more substantial on an H4. So there's definitely more room for this trade to move down. So going back to the 1 hour time frame, again, this is going to act as resistance. You have on the H1, you have the major moving average. We've broken below it, so it's likely to fail if we retest it. Not only that, but we also have this breakdown of the head and shoulders top. So this area right here where my cursor is at is going to be a major area of resistance. However, as you already know, 80 to 90% of the time, you're going to have a failure off of the upper band after a crash like this. And again, you had support here, it hit it again. So this region right here to this region right here is going to be huge. My preferred entry was actually the upper band because, again, the upper band will work 80 to 90% of the time, and I would have no problem putting a little more position on right up in this area right here. Because, again, this is major resistance. So in this area, we had this support, which was broken, became resistance. We had the upper band, and we had the daily S1 pivot level. So there was a lot of resistance up in this area right here. And again, this moving average here is going to act as resistance as well. Not only that, let me throw this on here too. This right here is going to act as resistance also because you have a bit of a trend line pushing price down here. So in the event we were able to make it up into this zone, this is going to be a massive level. The other thing that I want to show you that is key here, when you had this push up, the MACD did not push up with price. Neither did the THV. So this tells me there is a lot of negative momentum in the market on this trade setup. So there was definitely room for this thing to fall. And the entry right here that I was watching for was 103.45, which was the exact top to the pip. And we dropped all the way down to 102.89. So this thing, 57 pips of drop. And again, this was the last low. So this is a great area to get out. Also, the lower band right here will act as support, as will the S3. So this is why we're probably going to see a little bit of support down in this region here. So, and with it being Friday, you probably would have wanted to get out of the market anyways. But again, if you're taking these trend trades like this, you want to make sure you have a strong push down, a retest of the upper band, and you have to have other resistance up here too. In this case, you had the trend line from the head and shoulders top. You had the supports right here, broken level. Support becomes resistance. You had the daily S1. You had this trend line that was going to stop it. And then if I was to go down to the 15-minute time frame, this level right here would have been a huge level as well because this is a 15-minute CRT level. So 104 would have been a massive level. There's no way I would have expected that to just go right up there, especially the time of day you have to consider. This was, let's see, 18. So this was a little after noontime on a Friday. So you're really not going to see a substantial move like that going into the London close time frame. And as you know, London close is a reversal time. So I'm not surprised at all to see this push down. But again, the big thing here is if you're taking these trend trades, make sure you have a big push through the bands. Take the first retest and make sure the MACD zero line has just crossed. and make sure you have major resistance up above. You don't want to just get in because it's the first cross or the first touch. You want to have other areas of support and resistance that are going to hold the market in place. If you were to go through and look at some of these other trade setups here that we have on our charts. In fact, let's go to the euro dollar. I actually took this trade. This was not near as good. Not near as good. I still took it anyways. What we had here is, let's go to the 4-hour time frame. You had a nice little trend line headed south. You could draw off of that. Yeah, that's probably the best way to draw this one. But you had a nice little trend line. You had to push down here, bounce off here, bounce off here, bounce off here. So this is most likely to continue in the channel. Usually a downward channel is going to break to the upside. So if anything, you should see a retest of the high, perhaps a consolidation here, and another spike up. Because, again, downward channels usually break to the upside. So there's plenty of upside potential on the euro dollar chart here. So going to the 1-hour time frame, again, you had a powerful push up. Again, when you get a powerful push through the bands, the lower band, the first touch, is going to act as support, especially if you have a zero line cross. This, we were pretty much right at the zero line, so that made it a little bit more dangerous. But nonetheless, I took a buy down here. I would have liked to see a lot more support than what I had here, so I don't necessarily recommend getting into this level. It's a little riskier, but I took it anyhow because I really didn't see this just pushing up like this and just collapsing down. That would be extremely rare, so I had no problem taking a trade there. Again, it was a very small trade, but the THV bands you're going to see, and even the MACD, as we push down, these really didn't drop, so there's a lot of positive momentum, upward momentum on this trade. So again, we did bounce off of the lower band here. Again, the first bounce off of the lower band after a big push through the bands is likely to create another move up. If I were to look at some other examples here, you have another powerful push up here. The first touch of the lower band, you had a big push. If we can find another one, this was a nice push below the lower bands. It came back up and collapsed off of it. Again, this is way too far into the trend. You want to make sure it's early in the trend. I'm just showing you examples here. Like this right here. This was, let's see here. This was a news move right here. Again, I don't take these during high impact trading news events because this is where you get chopped to pieces. But this right here, it should have hit the upper band and collapsed. But again, this was a news move and we were way too far into the trend. By the time we got over here, let's draw our line. By the time we got over here, we were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 bars into the trend. So again, this is not something that you'd want to take. Again, you want to make sure that you're pretty early on in the trend when you're looking at these. Again, if you look at the higher time frames and see that you're at a major resistance level like this, and then you take a trade on a retest of the upper band on a lower time frame, it's more likely to push further down because you have a major level. Again, the bigger the level up here, the more likely the move is going to be larger. So you kind of want to look for that as well, as I mentioned earlier on in this video. But I want to go over some, see if I can find some other ones. Okay, we're staying away from the pound. We don't want to touch that. But again, when you get a big move above the upper bands, you're going to find the lower band acts as support. Like for example, let's look at this. We have a pretty big push up here. The lower band acted as support, continued move. Again, another big push above the lower bands. You had this right here. This was a news move, so you would definitely not trade the non-farm payroll right here. Nonetheless, it hit it, spiked down a little bit, and then reversed back up. In this case, you have a big push above the upper bands. You hit the lower band, and then you spiked back up to the upper band here. Down here, you had a pretty significant push. This is the one I would have really liked to watch. But again, you got to watch your MACD lines. There's no way you would have wanted to take this because you're still above the zero line, so that's a little bit dangerous. The only real trade to take down here would have been this one right here. Let's see here. See if I can draw this in. Again, you want to get it right after the zero line cross, which is going to be right here. And you want to make sure you've got support. I don't really see a lot of support down here. The only support level is going to be down here. So again, this is an iffy trade. I'm just trying to show you the criteria that I'm looking for when I'm looking at a trend trade here. I want to kind of give you an idea of what I'm doing here with these. Again, here's another. This is a pretty good one right here. I would have liked to see a little more solid close below it than this, but here's the idea. You have this hitting the moving average, support, 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 support. Finally broke down, so this level is going to act as resistance because you have this trend line that was broken, and then you also have the moving average. You can see that we did hit the upper band, and then we collapsed down. Pretty significant. 121. Let's see, we have 121 or 112.15, excuse me, all the way down to 111.90. So about a 25 pip fall right here. But again, you want to make sure that you have a resistance area along with your upper band. Make sure the close is solid, and make sure it happens quickly after the MACD zero line crossover. If you stick to all that criteria, you should have a good 90% success rate with these. Again, this is not something that I cover heavily in the course because the CRT is definitely a counter trend trading strategy. But if you're interested in trend trades, this is definitely the way to go about it. This is the way that I go about it. This is what I've had the most success with. Let's see if I can find some more examples here for you. Because these don't pop up a ton, but when they do, they're awesome trades. So they can take a while for me to find here. And a lot of times when I do these videos, I do not go through my charts and try to figure out cherry pick stuff for you. So it can be kind of difficult to find here. Again, here's a nice push above the upper bands. First hit of the lower band. Quickly after the MACD crossover, you did see you had it went back up to the other side of the bands right here. That's decent. Again, you want to make sure you've got other support down here, though. The only support level I see is going to be this. Why? You had a push down here, push up into the lower band. Again, we hit it here, we hit it here, we hit it here, and it finally broke out here with force. So this is going to be a major area of support. I would have liked to see this come down to here before I got in, but again, the bands wouldn't have lined up. And you're going to notice over here, this is a level that actually worked, because this is kind of a W formation and then broke out and it retested it. So this is actually a pretty good level right here. But again, it needs to line up with support levels and the lower bands after a big move like this. Otherwise, I'm not really that interested in it. Here's another one right here. You have a big push down below the bands, MACD zero line crossover. You have a spike back up into it right here. See if I can draw a line right there. It happened 1, 2, 3, about 4 bars after. So you can see it went up there, went all the way down to the lower side of the band. So you have, let's see here, $1.5584. The lower band was at $1.5549. So you had a good 35 pips available here. And again, this is a pretty good level here. Why? Because this is a trend line which was broken. Support. We hit it again, 2, 3, 4, and again, the 5th time of this trend line we hit, we broke down, we retested it here, we collapsed down, and then this was again another retest. So you have a bit of a trend line acting as resistance right here, and then you also have the upper band right here, and again, there's the moving average as well. But the idea here is you have to have a recent zero line cross so that it's early on in the trend. You want to make sure it's a strong, solid move below or up above the bands, and you have to have other areas of resistance or support. If you do not have all of these things, you do not want to take the trade. The more confirmation you have on these, the better off you're going to be. And again, right here, big push down. This is a little bit too far in the trend for my liking, but again, you do have some pretty significant resistance up here because you had support, 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 support. We kept bouncing. So this is still a pretty good area. Not exactly what I'm looking for here, though. Here's another example. This is something that I would have liked to see, but we didn't quite get it. This right here. Okay, you have a big shelf up here. This is going to act as major resistance if we break down. We did. We had a strong move below the bands here. So this area right here where my cursor is at is going to act as major resistance. If it were to fail there, it is absolutely going to fail up here. The problem with this, yes, we did have a zero line cross. It was early on with the zero line cross. As you watch price move back up into that zone, your THV was red, stayed red as we pushed up. MACD continued to drop as we pushed up. So the momentum is here. It's very negative momentum. You have major resistance here. The problem is it didn't push up quite far enough. I want it to touch this upper band or come within a couple pips. I want a really good entry on these. So what you can see happened here, and you can see the move was getting pretty extended too. We moved all the way from $1.53 all the way up to $1.5665. So we had a really extended move here. The idea again here is this. We had a big push below the bands. You want to retest the first touch trade, and you want to make sure you got resistance. So you have resistance here, first touch, negative momentum early on in the trend. So this would have been a great opportunity. Unfortunately, the market did not quite push up into that level. So for me, there was no trade available here. But had we pushed up into this level just a couple more pips, you're talking 56.13. We did drop all the way down to 55.38. So you had a pretty substantial move off of that. And again, it found support at the last area of drop right here, which is right here. Then we pushed back up. We hit this trend line yet again. Fell off of again. Came down to the lower bands. We hit it again. Collapsed yet again off of it. And then we finally were able to break through. And then this trend line right here became support. So this trend line, we broke above it, became support. This double top here also became support. And we were also at the first touch of the lower band after a significant move above it. I would be a little hesitant to take it because we are at some pretty good highs here, but nonetheless, we did bounce to the other side of the upper band. But again, make sure you're very selective with these. I don't take a lot of them. Everything's going to line up just perfect. I want to see some major support and resistance along with the band touch and the zero line cross. So just keep an eye on these. Hopefully this answers some of the questions people have had about my trend trades, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any input or any questions at all, do not hesitate to direct message me. I will be more than happy to help you out. All right, guys, we'll see you in the next video.